morning, Fern fans. We're on day 24 of having little puppy fur mothers now, and I'm just going to elaborate on a little bit of what I spoke about yesterday. So yesterday we spoke about how to choose, not how to choose commands, but choosing commands, how to avoid mixing the message up that you send into the dog. So we're going to elaborate on that now. So imagine you're further down the line, you've chosen which commands you're going to give to your dog, you've spoken about it with your family. They don't have to all be the same, by the way, like me and my wife have different commands for the dogs than each other that both mean the same thing. So I say come, my wife says come here. You can have multiple commands that all mean the same thing. You're just going to have one command that means different things. So we've got the commands that we want, we've made a note of them, we've established what we want the dog to do when we give those commands. Now it's worth thinking about, when you're giving that command, what the dog is seeing. Now, the size of this little puppy dog, she's 20 times smaller than me. Every time she looks at me, she's got to crane her neck right the way back and look up at me like that. So her perspective of us is far different from our perspective of them. You need to think about what the dog is going to see when she's across a field or at the end of the garden, compared to what the dog's going to see when she's sitting in front of you. So you're going to give a command, you need to bear in mind what the dog is going to see, because dog's primary communication is body language. They look at how you're standing, they look at how your face is, they look at what your arms are doing, what your hands are doing, and that to them gives a far clearer message than the words that we use or the sounds that we give. Although we communicate in words and sounds, we think dogs do too, but if you look at dogs, when they're together, there's not much sound that comes from them, but their messages, their communication is really clear, and they know what each other's doing. So we're not introducing body language yet, but we're just being very conscious of it. So you need to think about what a dog is seeing. So if you're calling a dog to you, think about the long-term picture. Ultimately, when I call the dog to me, I want the dog to look at me standing there. I'm going to have my hands out, or might have my hands out, like a cross shape. So straight away from the start, every time I call my dog and say come, my hands are out like that. Most of the time at the minute, it's because I've got a food bowl in one hand and I've got a piece of food in the other. So I'll keep them apart like that, partly to maintain eye contact with me, not the food, but also to give that visual to the dog of me standing like that. Because in 6 months' time, when she's 200 metres across a field, I want her to look at me, see me doing that, and she think, what does that mean? It means come sit right in front of me. Same as when I ask the dog to sit, my hand goes up like that, or up, high up in the air. So I'm thinking about that now, and I'm asking myself, what do I look like to the dog? What's the dog seeing when she looks at me and I'm giving commands? Now we're not introducing body language yet, we're not introducing hand signals, so don't get too drawn up in that. It's just something that we need to be aware of. What do we look like to the dog? What's the end picture want to look like? So ultimately, I can be hundreds of metres away from my dog, and if I put my hand up like that, the dog will sit. If I do that, the dog will go to their left. If I do that, the dog will go to their right. If I do that, the dog will lie down. If I do that, the dog will come here. So long term, that's the ultimate outcome. That if I do that, the dog's bum hits the ground. We're not teaching that yet, but we need to think, as I'm getting the dog to sit, what's my hand doing? If my hand's doing that, which is later I'm going to go beat the hand signal for down, the dog's going to get mixed communications and is always going to follow what the hand or the body says rather than what the mouth says. So it might be a little bit of a mixed or confusing message, this video, but if you can try and get your head around what the dog is seeing, their perspective of you being this big on the ground, looking up at you like this, or being this big but in grass that's this tall, they're not going to have a very clear picture. So we need to be aware of what we're looking like to the dog and what message we're sending to the dog, and we can sort of try and manipulate that a little bit towards our ultimate goal further down the line of when the dog's completely trained. So I hope you get the message of that. I hope you understand. If you don't, then fire away and ask me. I'll try and elaborate a little bit more, will be a bit clearer, and I'll film another video tomorrow explaining about body language in dogs and how we're going to introduce that afterwards.